The scenes became one of the most surprising, jaw-dropping, and emotionally charged moments in reality TV history. The cameras were rolling, the music was blaring, and the audience were anticipating the next exciting episode. Fans who had followed Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin for years were devastated by the treachery they experienced. The night started off like any other, according to sources, with them both getting ready for the performance, practicing their lines and communicating with their staff. On the inside, however, tension had been accumulating for months due to minor disagreements that had not been settled. Spoken annoyances and the ongoing stress, excitement, storm building beneath the surface. Everyone on the set sensed it. Chrissy Lampkin was nervous. As was Jim Jones. First to come was Jim. His typical assured gait gave way to a measured, even circumspect one. His hood was drawn down. Sunglasses were covering his eyes, exposing the tension that was boiling underneath. As he walked past the cameras and crew, he maintained an almost mechanical gait. One of his closest buddies, Tone, remained nearby. Perceiving the increased tension, he was aware that one inappropriate gesture or word may start a fire that would be uncontrollable by anyone. Chrissy showed up soon after, passing the cameras with her customary grace. She avoided looking at Jim at all, but the tightness in her shoulders, a combination of hurt, fury, and long-suppressed resentment, fueled Chrissy's voice as it climbed. "You always let them disrespect me. You choose them over me every single time," she screamed. Her remarks were scathing and piercing. Jim was unprepared and responded defensively. "I wouldn't pick them over you. It's impossible for me to govern everyone." He sounded frustrated and desperate at the same time. Silently, his crew wondered if they should step in or avoid being caught in the crossfire. This was not only a dispute. Years of tension that had not been resolved were exposed during the confrontation. Tone, realizing the situation was getting worse, intervened with caution. "You guys should relax. It was not here, not now," he declared. But with a piercing, unforgiving stare, Chrissy turned on him. The normally unbreakable equilibrium between Jim and Chrissy had been upset. "Don't tell me to chill. You're part of the problem." Frustrated and emotionally vulnerable, Chrissy stormed. Her heels reverberated throughout the hallway as she made her way to her dressing room. Jim mumbled under his breath, his face a mask of uncertainty and rage, and trailed behind by a few feet. Every moment was captured by the rolling cameras. However, nothing could acquaint the crew with the gravity of what was the dressing room. When Chrissy accused Jim of constantly putting his crew before their relationship, Jim defended his devotion to individuals who had supported him through good times and bad. Words that had been suppressed for years now began to flow, unadulterated and unrefined. Despite efforts by the production team to mediate, the intensity of the emotion in the room was evident. It was the most heated debate between the two that crew members had ever seen. Jim's shoulders were set, hitting all signs of displeasure. Chrissy was just as clearly in pain. Her eyes filled with tears, and her voice trembled with hurt and rage. Chrissy's feelings overcame her entirely at one time. Her sobs were unexpected, and the sound reverberated around the dressing room. Jim was briefly stunned, not sure whether to back off or console her. For many years, they had handled private disputes and public scrutiny with a poise that suddenly seemed unachievable. "You always prioritize other people, Jim," Chrissy cried and then yelled. "You allow them to treat me disrespectfully. After allowing them to speak down to me, you want me to simply go on." Jim's eyes narrowed, annoyance blending together. "I'm not in charge of everyone, Chrissy. No, I can't. I have exhibited patience. I've tried, but it's late. Let's stand back a bit. Now is not the time for this." Cuidases, accusing, and pierced straight through him. "It's not your place to advise me to back off. Part of the reason this occurs is you." Her remarks weighed heavily, and the room fell silent. Jim tried to collect himself by massaging his temples, but his face was etched with hurt and frustration. "I don't want this to get worse." However, Chrissy's attitude remained unwavering. "I don't want to fight like this." "Then, Jim, why do we keep getting here? Why must we fight every time? I'm tired. I can't keep doing this." The dispute continued for hours, emotionally taxing everyone in attendance. Members of the crew secretly captured of the altercation, knowing full well that the public will analyze this unvarnished scene for weeks to come. The footage from the cameras did not the breakup of a relationship, not just a disagreement. The clash between celebrity, loyalty, trust, and vulnerability. Eventually, Jim was briefly still, as Chrissy turned suddenly and raced out of the room. In an attempt to soothe him, his staff hurried after him. But the emotional toll of the evening was clear. Typically composed, the rapper was clearly trembling, his shoulders tense, his eyes focused, his jaw clenched. Although the production team made an effort to reorganize the set and carry on filming, the atmosphere had irrevocably changed. It was clear to everyone backstage that this was no ordinary argument. It marked a sea change, exposing long-standing problems that Chrissy and Jim were unable to overlook. Jim at the end of the night, separating themselves physically but absorbing what had happened in their minds. The leaking what happened was only partially captured in the video that would subsequently go viral on the internet. However, even that little glimpse was enough to stun the fanbase. Social media was ablaze with analysis, judgment, and conjecture. The dynamics of a relationship are pieced together by each observer under extreme pressure. One thing became evident as the evening wore on. The emotional bond, loyalty, and trust the relationship between Chrissy and Jim had been put to the test. Even though it had begun as an apparently routine night on the set, it turned into a pivotal event that would affect their relationship, careers, and appearance on the show. Weeks, months, and perhaps years would pass before the effects of that night were fully felt. The unadulterated, unrefined feelings, the public revelation of personal conflicts, and the difficulties of negotiating trust and treachery in the celebrity realm caused a storm that would stick in their memories. The true narrative, which was being of loyalty, annoyance, and the human attempt to strike a balance between private and public life. It was clear by the time the lights went out and the set was deserted that this would go down in history as the night that Jim Jones and Chrissy's lives took a drastic turn. A night of treachery, heartache, and a watershed that would influence their relationship and the reality TV landscape around them was Lampkin. It was uncomfortable, almost depressive, on the Love and Hip Hop Atlanta set the day after that tumultuous night, knowing that the emotional storm between Jim Jones and Chrissy Lampkin had not subsided. Everyone backstage moved gingerly as the air seemed heavier than usual. Social media was ablaze with speculative activity as fans discovered what transpired through leaked footage. Analyzing every word and face expression, the couple's personal problems were abruptly made public, and there was a lot of pressure to remain calm during the shoot. Jim arrived first, his manner stiff, almost robotic. He had his hood up and his eyes were protected by sunglasses, but his tense shoulders and tight jaws showed how troubled he was behind, knowing that any mistake can lead to another altercation. Tone remained by his side, watching Jim and the rest of the crew closely. Later, knowing that the delicate equilibrium could break at any time, Chrissy came in. Although her normally composed and polished appearance was a little off, the weariness from the previous evening was noticeable, but she kept her cool as she moved around the set without making eye contact with Jim. Production workers moved swiftly. In order to establish distance, Chrissy retreated to her dressing room, concentrating on going over her lines and getting ready for the shoot, knowing that even a small exchange could spark a furious debate from yesterday, even though the emotions from the previous evening were still very much there. The leaked video, which showed Chrissy's emotional collapse and Jim's furious reaction, had already gone viral. In addition to discussing who was at fault and speculating about the status of their relationship, fans were analyzing the video. Despite showing only a portion of the night's events, the tape, according to set insiders, captured unadulterated emotions and was sufficient to expose long-hidden flaws. The producers agreed that before production could proceed, the matter needed to be addressed. They set up a private meeting with Jim and Chrissy without cameras, in an attempt to mediate and diffuse the growing tension. Jim took the first seat, bending back with jaw clenched and arms folded, his typical self-assured enthusiasm. A few moments later, Chrissy showed up, Tompo on the outside but clearly tense, tightly gripped hands in her lap,